The inner demon trope is one of the most common in all of battle shonen, and of these tropes, Naruto's tailed beast are arguably the most popular and iconic, with Sukuna being one of the most popular recent iterations of this idea brought to life. So in this video, I wanted to talk about how a fight between the King of Curses and the Biju would go. However, this is not a topic I can handle alone, so with me here, I have 6 to help out with the Naruto scaling and generally give us a clear and concise understanding of what exactly Sukuna would be going up against. And to start off the discussion, I wanted to ask you 6, how and where do the tailed beast scale, obviously excluding Kurama because he kind of scales a little bit differently from the rest of them. Like, what can Sukuna expect as someone going up against the tailed beast generally?
So I'm going to keep things on the lower end with the tailed beast scaling, and I think the most fair interpretation of their speed is to say that they are bare minimum lightning timers just because of Kakashi scaling. Kakashi shouldn't be tailed beast level at 14 at all, which is supposedly when he cut the lightning bolt in half or whatever. Now, this feat can get a little bit higher than lightning timer if you're to say that, well, in order for Kakashi to cut lightning or for it to be visible to Guy, he'd have to cut the visible part of the lightning. And the visible part of lightning is the return stroke, which is around a third of the speed of light. But I genuinely, if I'm talking about what I genuinely believe, I don't think Kishimoto was going for that. I think his goal was to put Kakashi at being around lightning speed. So we'll just go with that just to be fair. And then the tailed beast obviously should be a little bit stronger than Kakashi, being generous to him. So they'll all be lightning timers. Obviously they should be much stronger, but they'll all be lightning timers, at least for the sake of this. And then calcs for the Biju range pretty greatly. So you have like Six Tails Naruto versus Pain. He's calced anywhere from island level to like large country, depending on like different methods you use with the calc. And with the most like acceptable or the most accepted, widely accepted throughout the Naruto community that I see is like multi-continental for the Biju. Now, that is with the collab Biju bomb from Kurama and Gyuki, but with Kurama being so much stronger, we know he was like holding back basically to combine with Gyuki. Or if you don't think that, then he was making up the majority of it. But it goes so far into multi-continental that you can label the other Biju as that as well. Like it's very deep into the multi-continental range of attack potency. So Sukuna's probably expecting like some pretty hard-hitting multi-continental, planetary at best. If you talk about, there's like one statement from Data Book 4 that says Biju bombs have earth-shattering power. Obviously you can interpret that like, oh, well, they can shatter the earth, like blow up mountains and whatnot. It doesn't necessarily have to mean blowing the earth to pieces, especially with the later statement from one of the V-Jump guys that says Kurama and Boruto can blow up the planet. Then there's the one from the data book, the third data book, that says Kurama can easily get rid of Earth or something like that. Most people interpret that as a life wipe. So being the most fair and the most generous, saying that the Biju are multi-continental are probably the most consistent. So multi-continental lightning timer Biju is probably what Sukuna is up against.
Yeah, and for Sukuna in comparison, obviously assuming 20 fingers at his max ability, being in Yuji's vessel, at least for the time being, we can maybe talk about how he operates maybe at potentially full power if you want to speculate like that. But just going based off of what we can pretty generously assume in Sukuna's case, aside from Gojo, he outright scales over every single character in the verse. So whatever characters like Jogo, the Disaster Spirits in general, or any like characters in the series scale to, Sukuna scales 2 and above, very similar to like how 6 tied Biju to being significantly stronger than a 14-year-old damn near chakraless Kakashi. And in this case, Sukuna's AP and speed can vary pretty wildly depending on your interpretation of some feats. So the first lowball, right, just to please the people that are very gung-ho on this narrator statement being the case, basically it's stated that Naoya Zenin, one of the faster characters in the verse, at least in his cursed form, was able to reach the speeds of Mach 3, right? And that being like some really high level speeds. It was able to blitz like a middling awakened Maki, although Maki after that is able to become significantly faster. A nerfed 15-finger Sukuna is able to scale to that. So at bare minimum, right, if you really want to lowball the verse, you really want to do Sukuna dirty, he's Mach 3, which, I mean, when we're comparing him to the Biju in that capacity, Mach 3 isn't going to cut it. Now, the next level of speed above that is kind of where we get into those like dozens of times faster than sound, and that's based primarily on Maki's feat of catching a bullet at point blank range. Now, this has been calced in many different ways. Some calcs say it's like just barely a couple of times faster than sound. Some say it's like 90 times faster than sound. But the generous, like kind of mid-ball, if you want to call it that, is like anywhere from 20 to 50 times faster than the speed of sound. This Maki is pretty much fodder in the verse. She can get blitzed by numerous levels of characters. In fact, she does get blitzed by the likes of Jogo, who gets blitzed by 15-finger Sukuna, and that Sukuna is significantly weaker than him in his full form. So once again, if we're using that argument and we're saying that Maki is basically the benchmark, Sukuna could maybe be like tens to dozens of times faster than sound, which once again, significantly more impressive than the Mach 3 idea, but not quite enough to put him at the levels that we would need in order to go up against the Biju. However, the final skill for Sukuna, or at least the one that is most reasonable to argue speed-wise, is scaling him to basically be a lightning timer. And this is based primarily on the fact that Hikari in Jackpot is able to seemingly react to Kashimo's lightning strike. While it does hit him and while it does actually make contact with his body, the distance between the lightning in Hikari's face and the distance he moves in order to get out of the way would require at least lightning timer levels of speed. I've seen some calcs say that it's like Mach 800, which is a couple of times faster than lightning, but just to be very basic, not to get too far into the weeds of it, Sukuna in this scale, in the most generous way that you could interpret him, is pretty high, maybe into being that lightning timer level. I mean, he's significantly more powerful than Hikari, as Hikari is like, would defer to characters like Gojo in terms of speed and combat ability. So at Sukuna's best, if we're being the most generous, so we could possibly be giving him the benefit of the doubt in every scenario, he's a lightning timer, very similarly to the Biju. Now in AP, the difference between like what a lowball version of Sukuna looks like and a highball version of Sukuna looks like is a pretty wild swing, because on the low end he scales to island level. This is simply because he scales above the legs of every Disaster Spirit, primarily Jogo and Dagon for the purposes of this discussion. Jogo is pretty easy. I mean, Sukuna literally bodies him in a fight, like he just absolutely obliterates him. And Jogo was able to create a mountain in the confines of his domain expansion. Not only is it stated, but it's actually been calced relative to his size that he is indeed creating a mountain-sized structure. And in Dagon's case, he actually creates an island. Jogo scales definitively above Dagon. Sukuna, even in 15 fingers, scales definitively above Jogo, and you can do the math on the rest. This would mean that Sukuna, at least when outputting some real power, maybe in a domain expansion or even in some of his more high-level techniques, would be able to reach those island levels of power. Now, the next level up is kind of where we get to that life wiper territory, or potentially even planetary, very similar to the high levels of the Biju. And Six, this is kind of where I want some of your input on this, because you're aware of the statement where it said that like Sukuna at his full power could destroy the world as we know it, right? Yeah. And I'm sure you interpreted that, as you said, like before we actually recorded this video, like you interpreted that as kind of being like a life wiping statement, or saying that like if he gets his full power, he can kill everybody on the planet, but that doesn't really mean he can just blow up the earth. However, we have been given some additional context into like what that could mean in somewhat recent chapters of the manga.
Okay, so when it comes to Sukuna being a life wiper, I sort of take it like whenever Geto was telling Gojo that, I mean, if he was him, his goal would be very accomplishable. He could kill everyone on the planet like he wants to, right? Or at least all the non-sorcerers. So I'm like, okay, well, Sukuna being a life wiper in that sense makes sense narratively, because he's supposed to be around comparable to Gojo. I'm not thinking anything like blowing up the planet, because I'm like, well, you know, Sukuna and Gojo, they don't really have anything that could blow up the planet, at least not that I can think of. But then Yuki comes along, and Yuki's like, star rage doesn't affect me, but then she's like up to a certain density, and she starts creating a black hole, and everything about it seems to point to the black hole being planetary. I mean, it shows an astronaut holding a planet in his hands, and then they're like, you know, the fallout of the black hole could have destroyed the planet. So I'm like, well, if Yuki can do this with like an all-out let it go, let's go to the maximum technique, maybe Sukuna could do it too, you know, in some particular way. But that's how I look at it now. I still think it's a little bit ambiguous, but I wouldn't be surprised if, say, in chapter 235, Sukuna and Gojo's battle starts to threaten the planet. You get what I mean?
Yeah. And yeah, I'm kind of a similar sense. Like, I don't think it means that Sukuna and Gojo are like casually blowing up planets with their attacks or anything. Like, these aren't Dragon Ball Z characters. But it is very possible that at least in like an attack potency sense, when they're bringing out their trump cards, maybe Gojo with Hollow Purple and a domain, or Sukuna with his domain expansion and Fire Arrow, maybe these are starting to get to the levels of abilities that, like, at least in terms of straight AP, not like destructive capacity, they're threatening like planet level characters. I would still argue that it's probably going to take like a high level of output on both of their ends. Like, they're not just casually throwing out these abilities. However, it's something that is potentially in their court. It's something that they could have, or rather Sukuna could have, as a level of AP. And what kind of substantiates this in my mind, at least, is not only does Yuki pull this off, but she's able to actually like restrict that power herself after unleashing it. Granted, Tengen is like half of this feat, but even half of like being able to blow up the planet is extremely impressive, and would likely get them into like multi-continental levels of power if we're saying that Tengen's barriers are like durable enough or have enough quality to them that they're able to contain and restrict this planetary level explosion to this really small area of effect. So once again, it's definitely more of a generous interpretation for Sukuna, but it is something that is possible, and it isn't something that is completely unsubstantiated by the narrative or the characters up to this point. Now, when it comes to these characters actually kind of going up against each other, whether it be Sukuna versus Shukaku or 1 through 8 Tales of the Tailed Beast, right? Because I think we agree that they generally scale in a similar place. Like, let's talk through what the low balls versus the low balls look like, and the high balls versus the high balls in their case, right? Because let's be real, right? Low ball Sukuna is like Mach 3 and island level, right? Yeah. What is the lowest you can reasonably scale a Tailed Beast?
So, I mean, the lowest is lightning timer like Kakashi, right? That's gonna be the reasonable lowest no matter what, because that Kakashi, he's nowhere comparable to Akatsuki members, and it takes 2 of them to take out 1 Biju. So reasonably, they can't go lower than lightning timer. AP wise, it'd be pretty hard to put a Biju below mountain level, because like fodder Biju bombs blow up mountains.
Got you. Yeah. So when we're looking at like the lowest of the low in terms of comparisons, Sukuna's floor is definitely lower. If you argue he doesn't get blitzed in one shot by like a Biju bomb or a tail swipe, maybe you could say he like gets rid of the speed advantage by pulling out a domain. But the problem is, like, Tailed Beast work on such a massive scale. I really wonder if like the 200-meter range of Sukuna's domain even really matters. Like, I granted, I don't know just the size of the Biju off the top of my head, right? But like
17 meters.
17 meters? Okay. I'm like
around there, because Gamma Bunta is stated to be 17 meters in Data Book 4. He's like 17 meters tall, and he's very comparable in size to Shukaku in Part 1. Gotcha. Now, there's like a little bit of ambiguity or vagueness there, because some people think that Bunta shrunk between those 2 points because there's specific species of frog that get smaller the older they get. And there is like, Ma and Pa, they're very small even though they're old. But there's also like the giant toad sage. He's old, but he's very big. So if you don't think Bunta got smaller, the Biju are like 17 meters tall, which in that case, obviously Sukuna's domain would be able to encompass them.
For sure.
But yeah, you can tell what you were saying.
Yeah, like I just basically think like a lot of what JJK characters have in their advantage in crossroads battles is like domains, at least sure hit ones, kind of negate the sort of they negate the speed factor so long as they're not getting blitzed and bodied. But in this case, I mean, even if Sukuna does just catch him in his domain, catch any one of the Bijus, I mean, like one tailed beast bomb and he's just gone, right? Well, maybe like if we're lowballing them right to mountain level, yeah, Sukuna's durability scales higher, whatever. But like it's really to the point where when we're being reasonable to both characters, at least in this like lowballed sense, Sukuna is completely inferior. Now, I think we get a little bit more of an interesting discussion when we start looking at the likes of like the highballed, or I guess more generous interpretations of them. Because with the tailed beast, I guess they can get significantly faster, right? If we're being generous and we're saying they like scale to more like end series Naruto level characters, that would still be bad for Sukuna. But under the assumption that their AP is the main thing that's changing, going from like mountain and island level to multi-continental, and like their, Sukuna and the tailed beast are relative in speed, with Sukuna kind of having a relative amount of durability and AP, I think that's when you start to be able to argue in Sukuna's favor, because I don't know if the tailed beast are really equipped, especially individually, to deal with somebody that has the same level of power as them, but probably has more mobility, more maneuverability, and definitely like a larger array of hacks in their arsenal.
It's like with the tailed beast, they are extremely large, right? So obviously, like hitting such a small target is going to be kind of difficult. Like when they're attacking Madara specifically, they all use just one tail to hit him, because I mean, using more than that, there's no real point, right? Because they're not gonna hit him. So when you get to like, okay, Sukuna, he's got these planetary levels of power in this interpretation. Don't help me. He's got these like planetary levels of power. And then in his domain, supposedly he's gonna get even stronger than that. And then he, like, the tailed beasts are being relentlessly attacked with no anti-domain attacks. And even though they don't have cursed energy, Sukuna's domain already accounts for that with cleave, because it attacks things without cursed energy. The tailed beasts get put in a really bad position, because I mean, sure hits effectively take speed out of the equation. They just land hits on you, and they're around the same level of attack potency. If not, Sukuna may be a little bit higher this time, just because of domain amplifications to the techniques. But for the most part, if you go with those highballed interpretations, and you know, obviously we're saying that the tailed beast speed, like, they're not gonna blitz and one shot Sukuna, because we're assuming that the only thing that's really getting massively stronger in this case is their AP. And they're still lightning timers. If you look at it that way, Sukuna might be able to sneak a W.
Yeah, his abilities, like, Sukuna isn't the most hacks character in the series by any means. Like, if you want that, you're gonna want to look to someone like Gojo, but just having a sure hit of abilities that like will relentlessly attack someone until there's nothing left is it's a pretty good way to make sure relative characters to you are getting obliterated. And I mean, obviously Gojo is able to survive it, but he also has like anti-domain techniques and the ability to constantly heal. I know that it's been a minute since I've reread Naruto, and the Biju, like, specifically even less, but I know that they can like regenerate like their tails and stuff like that, right? Like, doesn't Gyuki do that when he gets like his tails cut off?
Can regenerate their tails.
But they don't have like a crazy high healing factor, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, not on the level of like spamming RCT or anything.
Yuki lost a horn to the Raikage like 12 years ago, way more than 12. He's lost the horn to the Raikage like 20 or so years ago, and he still doesn't have that horn back now. Yuki may only be able to regenerate his tails, and that's like an octopus thing. Like, octopus can, or octopi, whatever, they can regenerate their tails. So,
oh yeah, it might not even be like a Biju like thing, generally speaking. Very, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's also very possible. And in that case, I mean, you're just landing, like, just imagine you're getting hit in the face over and over and over by someone that is just as strong as you without you really being able to hit back or heal. That's what Sukuna would do to the Biju in a highballed scenario. Granted, we are like kind of downplaying the Biju a little bit and definitely upscaling Sukuna, or at least having the most generous interpretations possible. But in that instance, he probably would do well. Kurama specifically, I feel like, is where things just get a little bit like more back in their favor, because yeah, let's be real, right? Kurama is like a bona fide just planetary character. There's like a lot of things that reiterate that. He's on a completely different level than the rest of the Biju because of like all of his hatred and blah, 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 right? And it's like, okay, if Sukuna's relative to these characters and then Kurama can kind of like solo them on his own. All right, well now we're looking at something where Sukuna's pulling out the domain and then just getting squashed by like 9 tails in quick succession and then a massive Biju bomb to finish the job.
Yeah. I mean, Kurama can like he can cancel out 5 Biju bombs on his own while holding back while they're going all out. So that should give you, like, if you want to say that they're all planetary, Kurama's like 5 times planetary.
Jesus Christ. Sukuna's gonna get obliterated.
That's already way stronger than Sukuna. And then, like, okay, I'm gonna throw this interpretation out there just because feel free to comment on it. I think maybe you could imply that sure hits are lightning speed through Kashimo's curse technique trait, because they do say Kashimo's lightning rings through the air and it results in a can't miss attack. because of that, right? Like he's got the negative charge on you, positive charge on him. And when it goes through the air, it can't miss, right? It's basically saying lightning speed attacks can't miss, and he doesn't need a domain to launch like can't miss attacks. So maybe, keep in mind, I'm saying maybe, that means sure hits are only lightning speed. Kurama should be faster than that. All the Biju should realistically, but Kurama should be faster than that. So maybe he can just dodge sure hits. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be that. First of all, that is the nastiest downplay of domains I think I've ever witnessed in my life. Bro, I fear for like the one person that heard you say that got a really good idea and is now going onto like Discord to argue that genuinely, bro. Like
they're about to be so, they're like, oh no. Did you hear like Kashimo's lightning speed techniques or can't miss just like domains? Like, no, come on.
Don't do it, bro.
Obviously that's not serious.
Don't do it, bro. You're gonna get cooked. It's not worth it. But yeah, I mean, like, even in the best case scenario for Sukuna, and even being like, even if you say Kurama is still like a lightning timer when he probably realistically shouldn't be, Kurama puts Sukuna in a body bag, right? He just like erases him from existence, basically. You can definitely argue under like, once again, generous circumstances to Sukuna, that he is able to beat out the other Biju, but Kurama is an entirely different entity altogether, and it's like continuously so. It's not like an outlier feat. Like, the difference between him and Gyuki is night and day, right? And if that's the case, Sukuna's fodder, he's getting packed up. I mean, like, it's just not doing anything for him, right? Sukuna doesn't really have anything in his toolkit or in his arsenal that can deal with somebody that's just as fast, significantly stronger, and arguably has like a lot higher levels of like strategic intelligence and all of the other Biju as well. Like has a better capacity for battle. So when you add all of those things, Sukuna is losing in that case.
You put Kurama's power more into perspective. Like, okay, say Gyuki's planetary. When Kurama did the like canceling out 5 Biju bombs thing that I mentioned, Gyuki's like, wow, he's so strong. Like, he's like amazed at it. So yeah, it's not an outlier at all. Kurama is consistently that strong, or stronger than the Biju.
And these are the guys, once again, like these Biju, the ones that are like looking up to Kurama as if he's their father, is like these are the characters we're putting relative to Sukuna in favorable circumstances to him. So even in that case, Sukuna doesn't really have anything. No domains don't really matter. The fire arrow isn't really going to do anything. I mean, Sukuna can maybe heal a lot to prolong the ass whooping, but like that's not really going to do much at the end of the day. As a big ball of exclusively like chakra, I doubt Kurama's stamina is going to wane even if he needs to beat on him for a while, right? It's really, no matter how you slice it, Sukuna does not have a way to deal like with Kurama and like the level of power that he has. And yeah, that's basically it. I think we covered that as in-depth as possible. So thank you to Six. Thank you for joining me on this video. For everybody that liked the video, that liked the collab, make sure to subscribe to both of our channels. Six obviously does a lot of Naruto content, does some Dragon Ball content for the people who can't read, and sometimes does content for JJK as well. You're probably going to start seeing some collabs here and there between us on both of our channels. So subscribe if you like this and you want to see some more cool videos like this. And anything you want to say, you can go and close out.
No, that's it for me.
Cool. Bet. Appreciate you. And I'll see you guys in the next one.